how do you raise sons? And she didn't say whether she was married or not, but I can speak to that when I found myself unexpectedly filling the shoes of a single mom. I had my son while I was married to his father, but because of divorce and me being this custodial parent, I found myself in a situation where I was basically a single parent mom with a son. Hi there. Welcome to my channel. My name is Suzette Viernon, and we are redefining our 60s on our own terms. And I hope by sharing the different things that are all things 60s, and according to some commenters, could work for people whether they're in their 60s or not. I hope that by doing all of that, that it gives you permission to really reimagine, redefine, and reassess and reinvigorate your life in your 60s. I am coming to you very spontaneously because I just finished watching the IMO Podcast, that stands for In My Opinion, with Craig Robinson and our dear forever First Lady, Michelle Obama. And guess who was their special guest in this most recent episode? None other than Barack Obama. I loved it, and I was so inspired by it that I started thinking about some things that happened in my life that were very relevant to the topic, and I just wanted to jump up here and share it. So if you are new and this is your first time and you like what you hear, you like what I'm sharing, then please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're an OG, a person who's kind of been listening to me from the beginning, whether you're a subscriber or you're just kind of like just checking it out on the down low, thank you so much for just listening to what I have to share. Oftentimes as you get older, you start kind of feeling like, well, you start wondering if you're still relevant, if anybody cares what you think. You know, you start feeling like with age, sometimes your world can get smaller. And I'm hoping by continuing to challenge myself to share what's on my mind, to share insights, to share wisdom, to share thoughts, to even share some things that I am struggling with or some things I found out that were helpful to me in my 60s, that it's going to be a benefit to you. And based on the uptick of subscribers and commenters, I truly believe that I am definitely on the right track. You all are making me feel so good, and I appreciate that. It lets me know that, hey, it's not too late. I'm not too old. What I have to share has an audience, and that makes me feel great. Today's topic came from a lady named Emma who sent in some asking a request, a kind of a question to Michelle and Craig, and it was basically something that I've heard people say often. And to look at, what's happening, there must be some relevance to this very thing, that we raise our daughters and spoil our sons, or some people say we raise our daughters and love our sons. Well, Emma was asking, how do you raise sons? And she didn't say whether she was married or not, but I can speak to that when I found myself unexpectedly filling the shoes of a single mom. I had my son while I was married to his father, but because of divorce and me being this custodial parent, I found myself in a situation where I was basically a single parent mom with a son. And I'm going to tell you that was really scary because, first of all, I was leaning on God real heavy just to be a mother. I did not think I was going to be a mother. So that oopsie that produced my son was a surprise. So it put me in a very interesting spot. I knew I was not going to have an abortion. So it's like, God, and this is my honest prayer. I said, God, you got to help me so I don't mess this boy up. That's exactly what I said to God. Because I didn't feel like I had any kind of maternal instinct. And I knew I was persnickety. I knew I could be anal about certain things. And even though I honor my parents, I appreciate them, I love them dearly, rest in peace, I did not want, in my own vernacular, to do to this son what I felt like was done to me. And again, it goes without saying, my parents did the best they could, and I honor them, I love them. If you talk bad about them, I will fight you. But they weren't perfect. And some of the woundings that happened in my life that were the most debilitating came through well-meaning parents who did more to injure my self-esteem and my isness, my essence, than to support it. And I did not want to do that to a male child, which goes to the second thing. I didn't have any brothers. And though I had a father that was in the home, my dad was kind of old school. He went to work. He came home. He thought providing for his family, that was the extent of what he was supposed to do. The training part was left to our mom. Pretty much the disciplining part was left to mom, unless she really kept right on pushing him to discipline us. And my dad, when he would attempt to spank us, would cry the whole time. I think he cried worse than we did. However, he made up for it because my dad, in his verbal whippings, would leave me so devastated that I would have rather been beat for the old and the new than for my dad to fuss, criticize, give me a verbal whooping. Oh, my Jesus. It was the worst thing in the world. And I did not want to bring what was familiar, that familiarity, to how I parented my son. Still, there was this issue, however, with the mother-son dynamic, where mothers tended to love on their sons and raise their daughters. And I'll be honest with you, as a single mom, even though I did not have a maternal instinct, there was something inside of me, I call it my God self, my higher consciousness, divine wisdom, that spoke to me and spoke through me very early in my parenting journey. And I knew I was raising a man child. It's like, I'm not raising this boy for me. I'm raising this boy to be a man one day. I'm raising this boy to be a husband one day, a father one day, a citizen one day. You know, he's going to be an adult one day. And my role is not just to nurture him, but to prepare him to the best of my ability for the world he's going to inherit. And so that was an aha moment that came up out of me very early, when he was a baby, when he was crawling, when he was learning to walk. And there was that part of me that just wanted to just love on him and spoil him and take care of him and protect him and rescue him. I knew as he got older, I was going to have to back away more from the nurturing side of me and kind of start to prepare him. I wanted him to be self-sufficient. I wanted him to be self-actualized. I wanted him to have confidence in his ability to be able to navigate his world as a man. And though his father and my relationship had its very bumpy moments that could have really torn him apart. And I was not perfect in navigating the divorcing parents, the post-divorcing, being a single mom. And I resented being a single mom because I never expected to raise my son by myself. So some of those resentments were spilling over into my parenting, but I'm thankful for those come to Jesus moments, those wake up moments that required my better angels, required me to grow up, to put on my big girl pants, to stop doing certain things that were familiar and start to realize you have a very sacred trust. For whatever reason, whether his father is in his life a lot, not in his life a lot, you're getting along or you're not getting along, you have been given a sacred trust to raise this son regardless. And I think that's one thing that I would offer to single women or single parent women raising sons. I would offer that to you as well. That forethought, that foresight of realizing that this beautiful child that you adore cannot be the full recipient of all that nurturing, all that untapped, unrequited love, that you don't have a man in your life to offer that to be careful that you don't give all that to your son. And by doing so, contribute to him not being the kind of person that he would need to be in order to be a contributor, a positive, healthy contributor in a relationship with himself, with others, with society, and giving him the tools whereby he can manage his way into getting the answers that a mother's love can't give him. Jumping on here, I wanted to share with you some of the things that I did as a single parent that I really believe contributed to it. One of the things that I did that followed through, I tried to make the way I parented him, even the way I disciplined him in different things, I tried to make it appropriate, age appropriate. One of the things that I taught him early on was how to clean up his messes. Sure, I didn't expect him to clean it up the way I did when he became a teenager. But as a little guy, if he spilled something or whatever, I forewent that natural inclination as a mother to just have him sit there. I'll do it. I'll clean it up. I'll do it. If you make a mess, I'll do it. I take it upon myself to clean up your messes. And that was something early on that I had to wake myself up on. It's like, no, if you do everything for him, he'll never know how to do it himself. And he won't know that it's expected of him to do it. So one of the things I used to do when he was in preschool, there was a daycare that was on the campus of the corporation I worked for. And one of the things that they were learning in that daycare situation, it was like a preschool, because he was young. He had to be about 3-4 years old. And they were teaching them how to serve. So they would have these little pots and they would have their little spoons, and they would go around and serve all their peers, all their little friends at the table. And I noticed that because on some of my lunch breaks, I would go over to the daycare to observe, sometimes to read to the kids, but often to observe, because I didn't want there to be the confusion of this is the way we do it at school, but then it did not translate into what we did at home. So since he was being raised to serve, which was a very wonderful thing to learn to do. I didn't want my desire to keep my house clean and everything to be perfect. I told y'all I was kind of anal before I had a child. I didn't want everything being perfect to cause me to cheat him of the opportunity to serve at home. And I remember, because I used to hate it when I'd walk into the kitchen and I had the sticky floor. Oh my God, that used to just irk me to no end. And I never forget my inner wisdom, whom I call God, said to me one day when I was really annoyed by it. He said, that's what Mr. Clean is for. And hopefully when you listen to this episode, there's still Mr. Clean, but basically it was saying that's what cleaning products are for. And so what I learned to do and what I invited my son to do, and I made it fun, was when he had made a little mess at the table, if it ain't no harm, no problem. I got him his own little sponge and I showed him how to do it. So when he made messes, I made it fun. And he said, look, Mama, I cleaned up my mess. And that made him feel really good, right? And so I would do things like that while he was growing up. Now, when he became a middle schooler, and we call it smelling his muss, he wasn't as excited as he was as a child, but I started making things age appropriate. One of the things I did when he got older, and even though he was playing basketball and he was in different extracurricular activities at school, and even though he was, AB honor roll student, even though he had all these things going on, I also wanted him to understand that he was no longer a consumer in the household. He was old enough to be a contributor in the household. And that if I could go out and work 8, sometimes 10 hours a day, when I came home, there were certain things that as a contributor in the household, he should do. And I remember when that inner voice said, it's time for him to switch from being a consumer to being a contributor. You need to let him know how important it is for him to be a partner with you in maintaining the household. This is where you both stay, you both make it dirty, you both need to eat here, you both cohabitate here, so there is some responsibility he should have. Now, there was some back and forth because his friends' parents did not require that of them. And sometimes he would say, well, my friends' parents don't require that. And I said, well, I'm not their mom. I said, but you are old enough as a contributor. You can pick up your shoes. You can wash your clothes. You can iron your shirts. You can keep your room clean. You have your own bathroom. You can keep that clean. When we can share, if I cook today, you cook tomorrow. If I cook today, you wash the dishes. If you cook tomorrow, I do the dishes, right? And because it was a 2-story townhome, the bedrooms were upstairs. I had a bathroom, he had a bathroom, right? But then downstairs was the common areas. There was the living room, the bath, the half bath, the kitchen area, the kitchen area, the deck area. So those were things that we negotiated, because my thing is, regardless of how hard things were for me on my job, going grocery shopping, all the things we moms do, and we make it look easy, but we do a lot to keep the household going, to make sure there's food in the refrigerator, to make sure different things run. I felt like it was his reasonable service, even though he had other things going on too, to learn some time management, because he knew these were the expectations, right? Now, if he had a very, very rigorous week, let's say if he had midterms, or they were traveling and doing things with his basketball team, I did not expect that out of him. But all things being normal, where all he had was homework, yes, he knew what was expected of him. And so those were things that I did with him. Another thing that they were talking about is how when boys are raised, they are basically raised to put a whole lot of emphasis on what they do, how they respond, how they show up in the world. All those things being good, but those things are external. And Michelle kind of offered to both Craig and Barack that the things that they were talking about in raising boys, neither one of them dealt with the internal part of being a boy or being a man. And that part of the problems that a lot of men and boys face is because they do not know how to connect with who they are inside. They don't know how to connect with their feelings. They know how to emote, but they don't know how to connect with their feelings, with those more vulnerable parts of themselves. They're often taught not to show weakness, not to appear vulnerable. And in teaching them that, they don't have the tools that they need to be able to manage their feelings, manage negative emotions, manage anger, manage hurt, manage disappointment. A lot of them don't even have the language for it. So they don't even know how to even go about dealing with it, because most of their speeds are happy and mad. Right? Those are two lanes they seem to understand or go up and down when it comes to their internals. And what I can say in my parenting him, some women say I had to be the mom and the dad. That was another thing. I told God and I told my son, I said, I can only be your mother. I cannot be your father. And let's face it, ladies, that's not a role that we even know how to. We mimic what we've seen men do, but we don't know how to be a father. We don't know how. And I understand what we mean when we say have to be the mother and the father. That means the absence of a man in a boy's life. I get that. That basically sometimes you're playing both roles. But we don't do it well. Somebody has to say so. We don't do it well. Even if our children give us accolades for being both, it's only because they didn't know what both were, right? And so because I realized that early on that I could not ever be a man for my son, I could not be a father. And the wisdom that came to me is that's too confusing. If you are trying to play mom and dad, imagine the confusion emotionally. I know intellectually he might feel like he can rightfully divide the two, but emotionally, I think because we women have tried to play both roles, that we have invariably taught our sons that we can handle everything. That they don't have to care if we're hurting. They don't have to care if it's hard on us. They're used to it being hard on us. We've made it look easy. Or they think that's just normal for their mothers to carry that kind of load. That's just normal. And even if she complains, it's familiar. He grew up with it. So it's kind of almost like this unconscious thing where if his girlfriend or his wife is having a hard time, he's kind of looking like, oh, well, okay. And sometimes doesn't even offer to help. Doesn't even know how to help. Because we've done everything. And I knew straight up, I did not want to confuse my son. I wanted to stay in my lane as his mother. And I asked God to help me to bring male influences, positive males into his life to show him positive, healthy masculinity, to help him as he decides how to be a man. I ask God to help me, to bring those people in my life to help me with that, because I only wanted one lane. Mom. I was a conscientious mother. And just because I was a mom with my first language being nurturing, it's just as feminine to expect accountability, to hold a man accountable to certain character, to develop his character. That's just as much part of being a mom too. That's just as much part of being a mom too. Being a pushover, to me, that's not feminine. And that's not being a mom. A lot of our models did not model their roles as mothers and fathers correctly. And so we adopted thinking that feminine is vulnerable and weak, and a son can get over on us, and which is perpetuated. Mothers love their sons. Basically, it's saying mothers let their sons get away with murder. Mothers rescue their sons. Mothers do everything for their sons. Their sons don't have to do anything. Basically, mothers still have their sons on their breasts and never wean them. That's basically what we're saying. And that's toxic. That's toxic. I don't think that's mothering. I think part of being a mother, part of being feminine is, yes, knowing when nurture is needed, but every mother has to wean their children from their breast. That doesn't make them less maternal. It doesn't make them less feminine. Likewise, part of being a good mother is learning to wean our sons from thinking that their mothers are the end all be all. We start providing them with opportunities for their maleness. Opportunities to figure out how to take this testosterone, this hormonal thing that you're doing, that you're experiencing in middle school and whatever, how to take it, and let's help you channel it. Not just toward wanting to have sex with girls. Not just toward wanting to compete with the other fellows in sports, but into being a contributor in the household. There's enough of it to go around. By teaching him how to be self-actualized, how to care for himself, how to be a contributor in the household, you're not making him feminine, you're making him conscious. You're making him a good partner where he knows that he's needed. Not just a consumer to be taken care of, but yes, he's needed. His presence is required. And he might sigh and all that, but let's face it, boys and girls sigh and roll their eyes and all that during adolescence. So if that bothers you, you're gonna have to get over it real quick. They're gonna be bothered by anything you ask of them. They just are. So I had to overcome that thing of, oh, he's being silent. Oh, I've made him mad. Later for that, my vision was to raise a responsible male child, or a responsible child to male adulthood. I knew that was my first responsibility. And the third, which goes without saying, is I had to siphon every decision concerning him through the vision I held for him. Not through how I felt as his mom. There were so many times that I cried silent tears because I wanted so much to protect him. I wanted so much to shield him. But one of the things that Divine Wisdom said to me is, if he makes adult mistakes, he's going to have to be prepared for adult consequences. Now, I didn't take it to the extreme because that would have been more damaging. But age appropriately, there had to be consequences to his actions that fit what he did. And then sometimes that took some work trying to figure out what punishment fit the crime. Because this whole thing of just go to your room, for an introverted child who wants to get away from you anyway, that is not a punishment. Just go to your room. Sometimes they're like, thank you, that gets me away from the discomfort of it. And when we send them to their room, actually, we're not doing it for them. We're doing it because we feel overwhelmed and we don't want them in our sight right now. It's for us that we send them to their room. Let's face it. It's to give us a time out. So just sending them to their room is not a consequence. Now, if I feel like if we're going to do that, then come into their room after you've calmed down, after you've had a chance to really assess the situation. You know what your vision is. You know what lesson they need to learn. Even though my son did not do this, or at least if it did, I didn't know anything about it. I think if a child graffitis a building, then a good consequence is for that child to go and clean up what he did. Restore that side of the building back to the way it used to be. If that means power washing it, if it means having to scrub the paint off, whatever the owner of that building feels like would be good, I feel like that's a discussion that he needs to have, and that's part of the consequence. Not just mama paying for it. But what can he do that will teach him, hey, there's a consequence to this that you're going to have to bear, not your mama. Because I didn't do it, you did it. And I can't, going back to him being a baby, teaching you how to clean up your own messes. Yes. Another thing they talked about, which goes very well into the arc of where I'm going, is that it's important for boys to have something that they do, to have a plan, something that they're working toward. It's good for them to have a little job. It's good for them to be involved, not just in sports, but something that gives them a sense of pride and purpose and accountability, something they have to show up consistently for. And that gives them an internal and an external payoff. Right? One of the things that I remember when my son, even before he was in middle school, I think he was in middle school. He was in middle school. When his dad and I were together, we were married. I remember there'd be talk about summer jobs, like summer work, and he loved cheeseburgers. So where he wanted to work where there was food. He wanted to work at a Wendy's, he wanted to work in a fast food chain. But again, the vision that we held for him was, yes, that would hit all the beats of, raising a responsible son, giving him something that he has to show up for consistently. It would hit those beats. But I also thought about, well, unless he wants to manage a fast food chain or own a fast food franchise, be a franchise owner, I don't want his resume to only have all his summer jobs were working in the fast food industry, because I knew that once he came out of college, they were going to look at his resume. And I didn't want him to fall into fast food being the only place that would hire him, because that's mainly what they saw on his resume. So his dad and I owned a business that we operated out of our homes. His father had an office and I had an office in the home. So when we were talking about a summer job, one of the things that I pitched to his dad, I said, listen, if we're grooming him for something more than flipping burgers, no harm in it, but that was the vernacular that we used. No shade, but that was the vernacular we used. If we were raising him for more than that, then we were going to have to put him in a situation that would help move toward that vision. So one of the things that we did was we hired him. I was the financial officer for the company. So I had him helping me with the administrative tasks that I did. I didn't only just type, I wasn't just secretarial, it was accounting. I taught him how to write checks to vendors. I taught him how to do these things. I took him with me. He worked with me. I gave him administrative tasks to perform, and he got paid an hourly rate. He got paid. He actually got his own little check. I think it was every week he got his own check, his own money. We helped him open up his own bank account. At that time, that was popular back then. These days they have things like Chime and all these other, things that kids can do from their cell phones. But back then, we didn't have cell phones. So back then it was opening up a student account. So I took him, he opened up his own little bank account. I think it was a savings at the time. And he would put his checks in his savings account. I worked with him. Part of my parenting him was teaching him. I had jars. And back then we were very involved in the church. We were tithers and offering givers. And so there were 4 jars that we had. One was long-term savings, short-term savings, tithes, offering. Right? And so when he would get his check, I would help him in deciding what percentages of his check would go into those jars. When he cashed his check, we would physically put the money into the jars so that he would know this is what you have to work with. So I was training him all along. And it didn't matter whether I trained him on that or his dad trained him on that. He was getting the training anyway. Right? So, and then his dad supported it. So his dad would say, have you put your money in those jars? So we were a good team when it came to our vision that we held for him and holding him accountable to that. So from that standpoint, he did get the input of his father, co-signing on the things that I was trying to teach him. Now, if you're a single parent and there is not a male in the household, an uncle, a cousin, a male figure whom you admire that can teach him, that he takes a liking to, that can take him under his wing and kind of give him more support from the same gender is very critical. And I know in this age where people are in vitro fertilization and test tube babies and all these kind of things, that IVF and being able to select the male sperm that you want to fertilize your egg before it's implanted into you. I know with all that there vicariously can be a lot more single parent mothers. You got surrogates now that can carry babies for you. So that can increase the options of single parenting, especially for women who really want to be mothers. But what I would offer, just from my experience, is there will come a time in your young male child's life. There'll come a time in your daughter's life too. It may not be as obvious until she starts getting in relationships, in intimate relationships. But it will probably show up very quickly or more quickly with your sons, the absence of having a male presence reinforce and support them. It is critical that there'll be a consistent male figure. It doesn't even have to be that there has to be a father. One of the things they talked about on the podcast that I was listening to was diversifying the kinds of men in your child's life, which goes to a point that I like to co-sign on. When I found myself fulfilling more of a single parent role because I was the custodial parent, meaning my home was the home my son considered his home. He would go spend time with his father, but his home was with me, and I was considered the custodial parent. One of the things that inner divine wisdom talked about was different males in his life. He had his coach. He had the pastor of one of the churches that I played the piano for, and he played the drums for. That person was in his life. The male teachers, there was a male mentor that he had in high school that was a part of his life. So there were males. I remember when he graduated from high school and I gave him a party. I would say, along with family, there was such a great turnout of men at his party. I'm trying to think if his father came to it. I'm not sure whether his father could make it. I don't know. I'm not sure whether his father was there, but there are certain males that I go to that throughout my raising him into high school, I stayed in touch with those significant males, and they came. They came to support him. They came to celebrate him. And that just warmed my heart so much. The males that were in his life in significant ways. Because here's the other thing, whether your son, and they brought it out in the podcast too, whether your son has a father or male figure in the home, it doesn't matter. Sometimes there needs to be other males in his life to help your son understand, to help the son understand the father better. Right? So there need to be positive role models in your son's life, not just the parents. Because one thing that I learned, there's also a point in a son's life, especially with my son being an only child, where he looked for bonding, same-sex bonding, hanging out with the fellas was very important. Connection with peers was very important to my son. Ergo, peer pressure, I don't think it's so much peer pressure as wanting peer acceptance, wanting a place to belong, a sense of community among peers is very important to boys. And something they brought out in the podcast, if you don't provide that and be mindful of that your son is going to need these things, then you don't want the internet, the online influences to raise your child. Because in the absence of you providing it for him, he's going to seek it out. And negative influences are right there. They love low-hanging fruit. And a lot of times, because we're so busy, providing for our children and living our lives, 9 times out of 10, you're not even gonna know who has your child's ear. Not everybody. So it's very important as the child is growing up to definitely have the males in that child's life while he's growing up, not just when he becomes a teenager and now you don't know what to do with him. Now you want to have a male in his life. One of those wisdom points in my life is there had to be some type of positive, ongoing male influence in my child's life, regardless to what was happening with his father and me. Because sadly, not all the time, but in some cases, if the father and the child's mother are having difficulties, the father is not as involved in the child's life. Sometimes the father just doesn't call because he's mad at the mother. Sometimes the mother is mad at the father and does not make it possible for that child to maintain that connection. Right? And so this is where you have to put your big girl pants on and realize you're not raising your child for you. You're raising your child to be successful in this world as himself. I want to go back a little bit when I was talking about consequences. I remember when my son went to college. Shout out to Howard University. HU? I know what you're saying back to me. Well, he went to Howard University, and I remember he got a scholarship there, free tuition, which was very helpful because that was during my single parent stage, and I knew I could not take on a parent loan for him to be in college. So he had to rely on that scholarship and the other scholarships that he had gotten when he was in high school. And so I remember his freshman year, wonderful. I think it was maybe his sophomore year when things went, he lost the scholarship. He didn't maintain the GPA that was required that he maintain, and he lost the scholarship. And I remember him calling me and being very upset, and I was already upset. So we went back and forth, and then finally it was like, Mom, I don't want to leave college. I want to stay here. And I said, baby, I cannot take on a loan. I cannot. And I ain't gonna lie, there was a part of me that after I got off the phone was trying to figure out if I could do the math and make it work, but the math won't mathin'. I couldn't do it. And I look back at that time and I realized it was a blessing. It was difficult, but it was a blessing that I could not take it on. It was a blessing. And he was saying, Mama, I don't know what to do. I want to stay in college, but I don't know what to do. And I said to him, you had the front row seat and the opportunity to work with me and your dad. You listened to how we've conducted business. You watched how we've carried ourselves. I said, you're very articulate. You're a great communicator. You're a great orally and written. I said, it's time for you to hone all those skills, those tools that you've observed of us and that you have cultivated academically. It's time for you to rely on that. If you want to stay in school, you need to find a way. He said, I don't know. I said, talk to some people. I said, I want you to go out there and shake trees. I want you to go out there and see what's available to you. You go. You tell them that you want to stay in school. You tell them. And you don't take no for an answer from yourself. Not from them, because he got quite a few no's, I'm sure. But don't you take a no. If you want to stay in school, then you make it happen. Legally, because I don't want to have to visit you in jail, because I can't come up with the bail money. Do it use the tools that you have. See what's available to you at that school. And I want you to know, he found a way. And though that was one of the most difficult times for him, I really believe that was one of those times that really showed him that he could rely on himself. He could trust himself. That if something happened unforeseen, he had the tools to figure it out without relying on his parents to do so. Without needing to be bailed out, he could figure it out on his own. And I don't know if he would have learned that if that had not happened, to the extent that he learned it. And he learned that lesson well. He never had to come back home to live with me or his dad. He was able to he attracted great opportunities during the summer. One was to work for the mayor's office in DC. Another time it was to work. There was various administrative jobs that he was able to hold. I think he worked in sales and marketing at a corporation as a summer job while he was in college. And he didn't spend the money, he banked the money. He learned how to manage that desire for instant gratification. He learned how to put certain things off and how to manage that in him, because his vision was he wanted to stay in college, and that was more important to him than sneakers. He did what he needed to do to stay in school. It meant that much to him. So I hope this episode has helped you. I know I can't speak to everybody's situation. I know I cannot. But after watching that podcast, I really felt inspired, because I was like, yeah, those are things that you did as a single mom. Yeah. And I even thought about things that they didn't discuss. And I felt like I could add to the conversation, especially for single mothers out there, especially Black women raising Black sons. That inner wisdom, oh my God, thank God for help. Thank God for help. Help internally, that as I prayed and I was willing for me to look for people, males in his life, to get involved, to thank them, to invite them, to create opportunities within my ability for my son to have time, consistent time with these people. And when things weren't going right, I went to those mentors, I went to those males and said, listen, I need you to help me. He's not doing this, and I need you to support me in this. A shout out to Mr. Pettiford. A shout out to Mr. Lee. A shout out to Don Webster, who is definitely, I call the Webster family my Raleigh family. Shout out to Don, who when he was a little boy took him fishing. And a shout out to his father, because even though we were not married the entire time, and he spent more of his time in a single parent home than in a two-parent home, I do have to shout out his dad, that there were things that his father did before the divorce that I feel like provided a foundation of masculinity for my son. Now, his dad was not always, it wasn't always healthy masculinity, but certain things like being responsible, certain things like cleaning up his room, certain things like helping clear the table, certain things like it's your turn to wash the dishes, certain things like come in here and make up this bed, come over here and pick up these shoes, certain things like, oh, if you take it out, you need to put it back where it belongs. Certain things like, no, if you're going to do a job, do it right. Don't do it half-ass. Those types of things, his father was helpful in. His father was very supportive in his education. He knew he was going to hit those books. He was going to have to. And there were times that his father actually helped him to study. There were times that I helped him study. So having that kind of foundation was very, very helpful. As far as cultivating character, that was more me. Requiring that his word be his bond. Requiring, and that I was the one that had conversations with my son about how I felt, asking him how he felt, and asking for more than just shrugs and whatever. We actually talked to each other a lot. And I think the dialogue that was cultivated with my son from when he was young all the way through to even now, the way we started talking together, even when he was young, how we problem solved together, how I told him how I felt about things, and I listened, and I required him to talk to me. That I think that helped him to exercise that muscle of being able to share what was happening for him internally and giving language to it. That was me. That was something that, because I was articulate, because I required certain accountabilities out of myself, because I was a talker, because I was vulnerable, because I admitted when I was wrong, because I had to apologize. And I was very specific. I didn't just say, I raised my voice and I shouldn't have. I would give language to it. I would give context. I said, you know what? I raised my voice because I felt powerless. And that wasn't fair. That wasn't fair. So I gave language that he could parrot back to me. And I feel like that was what I contributed. But even if you're able to do that, there still needs to be that male balance, because he's not going to be occupying female shoes. He's going to be occupying male shoes. And sadly, the way I see it in a lot of female-run households is I see the sons sitting down and the mothers catering to their sons, instead of the sons contributing and helping their mothers. Sadly, especially for us ambitious, go-getter Black women, more times than not, when I see us with sons, we mama them sons to death. We take on all the heavy load. Oh, that's all right, baby, I'll do it. We fix their plate. What about our sons fixing our plate? What about teaching them to do that? Or making excuses. Well, when he came in, he was so tired that I just want to do this. Well, what about when you came in, you were tired? Cultivating a good partnership. Letting him know, hey, you're a contributor. And contributor within reason. Teaching him to respect you. To respect women. Some of the things that Craig said his father taught him how to open the door for not just a young lady, but to open the door for women, period. If you see a woman struggling with groceries, offering to help, finding ways to make her load lighter, opening the door for her, helping, putting gas in the car, helping put things away. It's teaching sons to respect women, not because we're weak, but in their manliness, showing respect for women. Which again is something we have to be careful. You cannot feminize the way a man you cannot feminize male shoes. Because the same women that spoil their sons talk about men that act the way their sons act, like a dog. He didn't do nothing. I did everything and he didn't even offer to help. Well, are you raising sons that you do everything for? See, you listen. Sometimes we are contributors to the menaces to society. Because if you do everything for your son, he's going to become a husband that expects his wife to do everything. Because his mama did it for him. Right? And I know there are exceptions to every rule, but y'all know what I'm saying. If I'm coming down y'all street, just acknowledge it. Put your lip back in and just acknowledge it. It's the truth. The way sons learn how to care about women is to offer to help. It doesn't make her any less that it's not saying that she can't help herself. It's showing respect, showing regard. Is him wanting to ask her out? That's okay. I've got this. Him picking up the tab. It's out of respect and regard. Him cleaning out the car so that when he picks her up for the date, he ain't got to throw things in the back for her to have a place to sit down. It's out of respect and regard. And if you as a mother doesn't respect and regard it, then he's not going to do it. And he's going to look at her like she half crazy. So, no, we cannot be a man. But there are certain things that we do, ladies, as single mothers, that we need to kind of pause a little bit. How about when he comes home from college? Not just you cooking for him and, all this stuff because my son is coming home. Oh my God. Not just that you babying him, but take a step back and when you come back from work, see if he cared enough about you for him to start dinner. See if he cared enough about you that when you come back from work, he's washed the dishes. He's vacuumed. He's tried to make your load lighter. That's what it comes down to. In what way he can grow up to be a contributor in a relationship with a woman that can help lighten her load. Healthy women I don't want to say expect, that was a Freudian slip. Healthy women appreciate that. My husband's efforts to lighten my load, it makes more room for me to just be me and enjoy our time together. I'm spoiled and I love it. That boy was raised right. And kudos to his mom, Josette Viernon, who raised him well. Who raised him. He was a product of a divorce as well. And she spent her time single parenting two sons who are very, very awesome. Awesome. I say my husband's an awesome partner, and by all that I can observe, his brother is an awesome partner to his brother's wife, my sister in love. That doesn't just happen. That takes some forethought on the part of the mother raising sons to realize you are raising men. You're raising men. And to the extent that you raise them is going to be how they depend on you. If you always bailing them out of everything, whenever they have a problem, they're going to come to you to bail them out. Because you never allowed them to figure it out on their own. And to find out they can creatively figure it out in a healthy way that makes them feel good about themselves without feeling like they got to run to you every time there's a problem. That, ladies, we can determine. And so I just wanted to jump up here and just share that because I was so inspired by that conversation. And I'm going to put the link to that podcast in my description because it is truly a good one to watch. It's so good, it's conscientious, it's caring, it's honest, it's real. And I would love to hear from you in my comments if there's some things that you learned being a single parent mom that have helped you to raise conscientious as well as contributing Black sons. And even maybe some things that you did wrong that you wish you had done differently. Some things, anything that you can share that could benefit the viewers of this episode, share it in the comments. And again, if you enjoy, you find beneficial what I am sharing in my episodes, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you in the next episode. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.